I'd like to start by introducing our two speakers. In order of appearance, these are Lydia Vamvakeridou-Lyroudia. I've been practicing your last name, Lydia, but I admit I'm still glad I only have to say it once. Lydia is a program director for Watershare at KWR based in Holland. Their motto is bridging science to practice. Lydia, looking forward to hearing more about that. And then second, and coming live to us from the West Coast of the United States this morning is Rebekah Eggers. She is the Technical Innovation Lead for the Americas at IBM Global Markets. Rebekah, thanks so much for joining us. Good morning to you. It's a great pleasure to have both of you. So Lydia, why don't we start with your presentation? I think you have to unmute, Lydia. You don't have sound, at least I can't hear you.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. My name is Lydia Vamvakeridou-Lyroudia. I'm coming from KWR, the Water Research Institute of the Netherlands, one of the biggest one, which is owned by all the water utilities in the Netherlands. Today, what I'm going to talk about, sorry, why doesn't it move? My slide doesn't move. Oh, okay. So today I'm going to talk about digital water and the benefits for open standards, for standardization of the digital water. So the first thing is, what is digital water? Digital water is a combination of two things, the value of water and the value of data. And that leads to smart water management, smart homes and smart cities. The tools to achieve it are digitalization and, most importantly, integration. Integration of the software and the sensors and everything we use for it. Of course, there are also the issue of digital business models and customer access and the various products and services that come out of it. The digital water challenges need to address the whole water cycle. And we need to keep in mind that the water sector is generally conservative, very conservative, much more than the energy sector, and fragmented. Information science, data science, all those digital things are a very recent addition to water management overall. Don't see to a few exceptions, I'm talking about the general rule, but rapidly increasing to a new digital reality for all of us. And that means, in one word, that the water sector is in digital transition. What does this digital transition mean? It means a transition towards the Internet of Things. We had a previous breakout session about it in this conference. It means multiple data sources from sensors, images, and everything across the sectors, exchange data with and receiving data from energy, from weather, from other things, and other sectors. Real-time operational management, interconnected systems, so no isolation of the water utility and their software anymore, cloud services, data exchange, and let's not forget that Europe is moving towards a single European data space, and of course to a single European digital market services. That leads to digital twins, which we're going to hear more later. But for the digital twins, we need integration, interoperability, and open standards, which is the most important, and standardization. The European Union in 2018 funded 5 projects in parallel to do exactly this, to find digital solutions for the transition of the water sector. And these 5 projects, you can see them here. One is being led by KWB's Digital Water City. You heard about it in earlier sessions, and these are the other 4. So the other 4, all of us, gathered our forces together and helped each other and created a subgroup called DW 2020, which is the Digital Water 2020. And we're working on this, promoting interoperability and data exchange through the ICT for Water cluster, which is the main cluster of European projects funded in the ICT and water sector. So, DW 2020, what are we doing? We are fostering a digital single market for smart water services. And we address the low level of maturity for the water sector through integration standardization and the business processes and models for this. including the integration with the legacy system. And that's very important because we cannot go to the utilities and say you need to throw away whatever software we have. We need to integrate with the legacy systems that are already there. And that's for water sector, for solutions. And our aim is to benefit from the fiber ecosystem. The fiber ecosystem is a big platform, a framework for open source platform, which was funded and supported by the Commission, starting in 2011 to 2016. And now it's being used more and more for various infrastructures, the energy, the transport, water now, and becomes the main platform for the smart city. So what we're doing is a formalized use of what we call the context brokerage architecture, which is like developing an adapter, where what we have in one side can be adapted and talk to something on the other side. On one side being one sensor, the other being another sensor or software. That's the context broker in a general thing. So it's the transition towards the IoT era. And it's in the middle of the communication between different things. Things being the user or the sensor or the software or anything else. And it comes down to data formats for exchange, language agnostic approaches, and so that we can use off-the-shelf components integrated with the rest, providing generic solutions with a large amount of conceptual and functional reuse. What's in there for me? For the water utilities organizations, there are many benefits of it. Monitoring of water systems with sensors of all kinds, real-time operational management, not isolated with other sources, combining data from water infrastructure with meteorological data, drones, citizens, social media, and so on. Provided warnings and alarms to the public. Data and information exchange between organizations and authorities, leading to better understanding of multiple impacts. And we can say, as a conclusion, that DW 2020 paves the way for all of us, for managers, operators, and software developers, for smart water infrastructure management using open standards. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Lydia, for this fascinating presentation. Just a quick reminder, if you have any questions for Lydia, please ideally ask them on the Blue Planet platform underneath the session that you're watching and not on this Zoom chat. All right, Rebekah, why don't we continue with you? Let's make it a seamless transition. Could you share your slides? And switch on your sound as well. There you go.
Okay, can you hear me, Timon?
Yep.
Thanks, Timon. So yes, I'm Rebekah Eggers with IBM, and it's a pleasure to be here today with the Blue Planet Berlin Water Dialogues. And I've been looking forward to this discussion around how open source principles boost the development of smart solutions. When I was thinking about what I would share with you today and this great opportunity to collaborate with Lydia, I was reminded of a visit I made a few years ago to the University of Exeter to give a keynote where Lydia is a senior research fellow. And I remember taking in the collegiate spirit and love of learning that I think is really appropriate for this discussion because it manifests in the open source principles, transparency, participation, and collaboration. And with that in mind, I decided to begin and end my presentation today with some studies and research studies. So we've been talking about digitalization in water and wastewater for quite some time now, although it is a newer concept, as Lydia mentioned. What has changed is this new sense of urgency driven by climate change, the recent pandemic, and a move towards economic equity. This is an excerpt from an Institute for Business Value paper on 5 trends for 2021 and beyond. And I'll briefly comment in each one. The first is that the social contract is on the docket. Business leaders must make strides to be a part of the solution and not just the problem. Mental health and mindfulness in terms of leadership is important as we take in a holistic approach to people management and enablement. Number 3 is where I really want to focus for the remainder of our discussion, so we'll come back to that. But it's around supply chain instability throughout the pandemic, which has really crystallized the need for intelligent workflows and an acceleration of the digital transformation. And leaders who are accelerating their technical transformation are able to redefine the competitive landscape. This last one is one of my favorites. As we all know now, and we are here today, virtual is reality. So there's the move towards virtualization and automation. A full 62% of executives across all industries indicated that they would be accelerating their digital transformation as a result. So I invite you to check out the research behind this while we focus in on that third item, intelligent workflows. What is an intelligent workflow? It's the orchestration of data, skills, and technology that provides end-to-end visibility and speed to value for processes. To lean in on those 3 items, data, skills, and technology from a water and wastewater perspective, I'll start with the data. You may have heard the statistic that a full 20% of the data available in the world is searchable on the internet. That leaves 80% that's locked behind the walls of enterprises like water and wastewater utilities. And our opportunity is to unlock the valuable insights that result. The skills we touched on a bit already. So it's this recognition of the need and a new sense of urgency, willingness to double down on skills. And then the third is the technology. So as you might expect, I have a slide on the technology. Really what we're showing here.
I just realized that this is not in presentation view. So if you could, I've got a pretty large screen, but for some people in the audience, it might be better to view it in the, larger.
Sure thing. Let me see if I can change that for us. So, how's that? Any better?
I don't see any different. I don't see any difference, but I think we can just continue like that. It's just
okay. Apologies. It's showing full screen for me. Apologies.
Right. Oh, there we go. That's better. Now it works.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you for that. So really, just to again center where we're at, we're talking about the data, the skills, and the technology that make up the intelligent workflow. From AI to cloud to IoT, Lydia mentioned it, but leading utilities across the entire water value chain are exploring possibilities for innovation by leveraging these and doing proofs of technology and executing on these technologies. So the point here is that the technology has arrived and it's driving benefits. Let's go back to the intelligent workflows that we've established. What is a workflow? A workflow is how work is done. And the intelligent workflow is reimagining that workflow with a view to avoiding supply chain disruptions, improving service and engagement with customers, and enabling training and managing of people in a virtual environment. It's different from traditional because it's not siloed by domain. Rather, it's transparent and integrated. Now let's look at an example of a specific technology. So from an AI perspective, AI has been a huge accelerator. But there's a saying that we have that I'd like to share with you today. There's no AI without IA, or information architecture. And that's driven by big data, analytics, and the hybrid multi-cloud. Information architecture are supported now by open source principles of transparency, participation, and collaboration can drive massive outcomes. You can see the silos on the left and how information architecture allows us, as Lydia was mentioning with the context broker, to decouple the data and the applications and then create APIs and intelligent workflows They become the digital layer over the physical world, and they foster alignment between the front, middle, and back offices. They enable interoperability and portability to build once and deploy anywhere. And the benefits are exponential. We're finding across all industries that we're able to unlock value, such as lowering the total cost of ownership and enable processes that run 5 to 10 times faster. You'll see where it's been applied in utilities, operational and customer benefits are still produced, but the great news is now they can be repeated anywhere. An example of this, you may have heard in an earlier session from Vamvakeridou from the Digital Water City, one of the 5 projects that Lydia mentioned. So I've had an opportunity to serve on the advisory board for Digital Water City. And one of the things I was most impressed with was how quickly the teams recognized the need of a key requirement around ease of implementation and a fully functioning solution. And there were huge benefits from a cybersecurity perspective because of the transparency that was enabled. It's important to remember, however, that this new way of working change is essential. It's a paradigm shift. It will free our people up to do different work, develop new skills. It will allow us to attract new talent to the industry, but it will require a growth mindset. There's a study from the fall of 2020 around the value of open source skills in a cloud era that found 87% of hiring managers saw an increase in career opportunities, increase in wages, as well as job and progression opportunities. While a full 93% of recruiting managers said those skills are still hard to find. So in conclusion, we've had a recent acceleration of the digital transformation. Intelligent workflows, leveraging open source principles, bringing together the data, the skills, and the technology in an orchestrated fashion are allowing us to achieve massive benefits. But the cultural change and growth mindset and lifelong love of learning is required. With that, Timon, I'll turn it back to you for questions.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Rebekah. That's very insightful. Let me see if we have any questions from the audience. And just a quick reminder, you can fire away on the platform. Heidi's gonna list your questions and pass them along to me. I'm not seeing any questions so far. So Lydia, you seem to include quite a lot of public players or PPP in your activity. You mentioned cities, communities, and so forth. Do you generally encounter reluctance or openness regarding your ideas? Could you elaborate on that just a little bit?
That's a very interesting question because we have encountered all sorts of things. I'm the scientific manager in 2 of those projects, Fiber for Water and TAC+PS. And Fiber for Water has one big social citizen-linked, part, where we are trying to engage from citizens directly, explaining, for instance, the benefits of smart water to them and what it is, and to cities and municipalities in Eastern Europe. So we've managed to see everything from people that had no idea but were willing to listen, to others that had no idea but were not willing to listen, and to others that had some idea and also were willing to increase their information. So there is a lot of things to be done, in my opinion, for social awareness, for managers' awareness, for stakeholder awareness, which is not there already.
That's super interesting. And also, I'm sort of in awe at the complexity of factors that come into play, Lydia. So my question is not so much on a political level, but rather a purely operational one. What is your biggest challenge and how do you go about addressing or solving it right now?
I would say it is trust, because the water utilities have are misinformed. When you tell them that you're going to use the cloud, for instance, or that we're going to exchange data, they have the false idea that all the data they have, even the classified ones, will be open to the public, which is not the case. And this is something that we need to work on. It's not there yet. Some utilities are better than others, but I think that's the biggest problem we have, issue or challenge.
Challenge. All right, that's a good one. Thanks. There's a question from Walter who asks, can you talk about the data requirements necessary to begin using AI? I think this might be a good one for you, Rebekah. Can't hear you, Rebekah. I don't think you have sound right now.
Try again. How about
there you
now?
go. All right.
Okay. So that's a really good question. So, and the answer is it depends. It depends on what you're trying to train. So when you think about AI and the process to train a model, you need to have a sufficient body of information in order to train that model. But then, once you're able to, it can actually learn, as you provide the continuous feedback loop. So again, it will depend on the use case. And in that moment, the key is to train a model with information that's industry relevant. And that's why we always work. We don't just work with technologists, we work with industry partners to train the models. And over time, those models then can become more intelligent and more accurate.
Okay. All right, and then the next question is, can you please explain more about water assets data structure initiatives? This isn't for anyone, specifically, but maybe Lydia, you want to go first?
Actually, the structure initiatives are within the cluster of those 5 projects, and it's called data models. Data models in our language, in our lingo, is the data structure that we need to have in order to be able to talk to each other using open standards. That's work in progress from the 5 projects. Actually, next week we have also a public webinar for our other members of the ICT for Water cluster. And we expect, we already have the first models, data structures, as it's called. There is an open GitHub, there are groups working on this, and it's something that it's being added on. And we expect to have, say, in a year or so, finished projects with finished things. Already we have some, for some types of data structures and assets, for some assets. And we're increasing the collection of data structures.
All right, fascinating. Okay, so Rebekah, you mentioned cost reduction in operation and maintenance of infrastructure. Do you have examples in the water sector?
Yeah, and I actually, when you think about assets, there's 2 sides, right? There's the physical world, and then there's the virtual world, the digital world. And I think you start talking about work and asset management and the benefits that can be achieved by leveraging technology. And for this, I would use an example of sort of time-based to condition-based maintenance, which is really where we're moving. If you think about a time schedule on a given asset, you could maintain it every 5,000 miles if you think about your own car.
Sure.
Or you could provide the maintenance when it's required sooner for an asset that's in poorer health, perhaps, or you could wait longer if you have the data behind the health of the asset to be able to say that based on this, we know that it's running well, we don't see any anomalies, and therefore we can delay the maintenance. So the benefit then comes with the ability to defer maintenance and the savings, the cost savings, as well as the view that this dashboard view that you now have of all of your assets and the ability to plan and schedule accordingly. So now you can intelligently, rather than just dealing with every issue when there's a failure, you're able to proactively manage and maintain the assets. And as well, if you did do a time-based maintenance schedule and then you had a major issue, then there's a huge cost to bringing the operation down, obviously. So there's a great benefit in moving to using data to manage your assets.
Great. Let me see. There's another question for you, Rebekah. You mentioned a 10% reduction in non-revenue water. Does that involve the use of smart meters?
Yes, so you need the smart technology providing the data to be able to do this in a virtual environment. So yes, it is by tracking, it is by becoming more intelligent, even you know, with your conversations with your customers when they call, you can now with the smart meters and the smart data, instead of just taking the customer's word for it, you can start to diagnose the issue. You can identify the time of day when there's been a problem, and you can have an intelligent conversation to help to try to alleviate the concerns or explain the concerns. And you can also be proactive so that those things don't happen and the high bill surprises don't occur, as well as, you know, the wasting of such a critical resource.
All right. We have another question. What are the main obstacles that you find in the process of making accelerated advancements towards more open source adoption in water infrastructure? Perhaps this one is for you, Lydia.
Well, I'm not sure. It's more generic, this question, and it's not easy to answer it in one word. And I think it's partly answered from the previous one. It's a whole mentality that needs to change. Rebekah talked about the same thing. We are in transition. We are pushing towards this transition, and that's something that needs to have a multi, I would say, multi-technological, a multiple approach, technological, but there's a change of mentality, and this needs to be, it's not simple, but we cannot get away from it.
Sure.
Sure,
sorry. Rebekah, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I do. I love what Lydia sort of shared there. In addition, I think I would elaborate on this idea of, you know, we're already seeing some more collaboration, you know, within the utility and across the utility silos. But one of the barriers and one of the issues is thinking about, and Lydia mentioned it earlier, thinking about data going in and out of the utility, and how do we protect that data? Concerns about the quality of the data. So if I'm going to share my data, it better be correct. And, you know, perfect being the enemy of good and progress. So I think, you know, those are some barriers. I think we also have some regulatory barriers in the fragmented, you know, nature of our industry. And then, you know, it's as we were discussing before, it's a paradigm shift. It's a different way of thinking. And so it takes a huge focus on change management and change enablement, new way of working.
Sure. So we've got a couple of more minutes. Rebekah, I have one more question for you. On your, I think, first or second slide, you kind of touched upon a variety of disruptive forces in energy and utilities markets. And I think the ones you mentioned undoubtedly all matter, and they're also intertwined in many ways. But I was wondering, can you name one that has the single biggest impact? And if so, why? And how do you take that into account in your daily work?
Oh, wow. That's a tough question.
It's probably even tougher because I'm only going to give you about like a minute to answer.
A minute to respond. You know, I think, you know, one of the real emerging items that I think is important is equity, and how we correct for that. You know, water quality is an important, you know, concern. Air quality in certain areas of the world is an important concern. This is the one that's top of mind. How do we do that on a rate base where, you know, everyone is sort of you know, accountable equally, yet benefiting differently from the service?
I see. Great. Final question to both of you, perhaps like 20 to 30 seconds each. If we were going to have this conversation again 3 years from now, What would be the most important change? Like, what do you foresee happening in the future that'll have a massive impact on the topic that we're talking about? You want to go first, Lydia?
That technology alarms would have reached the water managers and they would have realized what's happening.
Beautiful. That's short. Rebecca?
I have high expectations in the speed of technology evolution and the speed of change. I know that, you know, we do have a very conservative industry, but I expect that the opportunities that are available to us will completely change. So we'll be talking about different topics, perhaps blockchain, perhaps quantum in this space
Right.
where we haven't today.
Okay, great. Rebekah, Lydia, it's been a privilege having you. Thanks so much for your time and expertise, and thanks to each and all for a lively and multifaceted discussion. Given the very limited time, it's been great fun. Have a wonderful rest of the conference. I hope to see you on the main stage right now. Take care. All the best.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, guys.
Goodbye.
Bye.